can you please define for me, what is a woman?
Our focus at the department is to provide equal access to students, including students who are LGBTQ, access free from discrimination.
Okay, so what's the definition of a woman? You haven't given me that. Following the civil rights movement of the 1960s, lawmakers established Title IX, rules to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex in federally funded education programs, making a historic impact on girls and women's sports. For example, before Title IX, female athletes only received 2% of college athletic budgets, and athletic scholarships for women were quite rare. Title IX unquestionably transformed women's sports, ensuring female athletes enjoy the same opportunities as their male counterparts. Earlier this month, on April the 13th, your department filed a proposed rule amending Title IX regulations to unilaterally force schools to allow biological males to participate in women's athletics. This proposed rule would withhold federal assistance from schools across the nation seeking to maintain the integrity and safety of women's sports. Since Title IX prohibits discrimination between male and female to ensure that each gets appropriate funding, I think it's important that the country sees that HHS understands the difference. So can you please tell me, or can you please define for me, what is a woman?
Our focus at the department is to provide equal access to students, including students who are LGBTQ, access free from discrimination.
Okay, so what's the definition of a woman? You haven't given me that. You haven't answered my question.
I think that's almost secondary to the important role that I have as Secretary of Education.
My question is not secondary. My question is very simple. What does HHS say the definition of a woman is?
I lead the Department of Education, and my job is to make sure that all students have access to public education, which includes co-curricular activities. And I think you highlighted pretty well the importance of Title IX and giving students equal access, whether it's scholarship and facilities.
Okay, so you're not going to answer my question. Do you believe that a biological male who self-identifies as a woman should be allowed to compete in women's sports?
I believe our focus needs to make sure that all students have access to public education.
A yes or no is sufficient.
Well, I think it's not answered with a yes or no. I think all students should have access to
I think that's a yes or no question.
Activities.
Do you believe that a biological male who self-identifies as a woman should be allowed to compete in women's sports?
I believe all students should have access to all things that public education
You're not going to answer
provides.
my question. Do you believe allowing biological males to compete in women's sports benefits female athletes?
I believe it's important that we take into account the needs of all students when they're engaging in extracurricular.
Okay, so again, you're not going to answer my question. Do you believe allowing biological males to enter women's private spaces, such as bathrooms and locker rooms, is safe for female students?
It's critically important that we make sure all students feel safe in their school environment, all students.
Okay.
And that's the responsibility of our schools.
So what does that mean? Does that mean then that biological males should not be allowed in women's personal spaces? Is that what you're saying?
It means that the perspective of all students should be taken into account when decisions are made around facilities.
Okay, is that what your rule is doing?
Well, it is a proposed rule, as you know, and the proposed rule says there are no complete bans. It provides flexibility for schools, and we have an open comment period, which we welcome comments from different perspectives up until May 15th.
Okay, I want to be clear. Female athletes across this country are bravely speaking out against this dangerous and misguided policy that you are putting forth, and rightfully so. Earlier this month, former college swimmer Riley Gaines reported being assaulted, physically hit by transgender protesters at San Francisco State University after speaking out against trans athletes' participation in women's sports. She was also forced to barricade for hours in a classroom as protesters demanded ransom, if she wanted to safely leave the campus. Are you familiar with the story?
That is unacceptable. Student safety should never be compromised on any of our campuses.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that. So, Mr. Secretary, what is your message to athletes like Riley Gaines who have legitimate concerns about how your department's proposed Title IX rule change will destroy girls and women's sports?
As I said, it's a proposal, and we're taking open comment, but it is our focus at the Department of Education to provide equal access, free from discrimination, and things that are available to students in our public schools.
All right. The reality is, though, that the Department of Education, through the Department of Education, President Biden, in my opinion, is attempting to weaponize Title IX morphing it from a law that protects women to a law that disadvantages or endangers women. Further, the department is doing so with taxpayer dollars, an action that spotlights where you and your president's true priorities lie, in my opinion. How much money has been spent or will be spent crafting and implementing this proposed rule?
I can have my team get back to you on costs for.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.